Good morning, people. I'm going to start a short series of videos where I go more step-by-step in detail of each part of the 2020 DBQ rubric so that all of you AP history students can understand how exactly you can attack those points and again, how you can prioritize those points, because on a 45-minute time period, you don't want to be spending a majority of your time getting something that is a more elusive or difficult point to get. So in this first video, I'm going to be discussing your thesis point, which is the foundation point for the entire essay that you are writing. Without the DBQ thesis point, you are likely only going to be able to get 2, maybe 3 points total on that 10-point rubric, or 2 out of 7 on the traditional rubric. So let's take a look at the rubric as it was released by the College Board. I'm going to share my screen with you, so hopefully you can see this. Come on, technology, don't fail me now. All right, so it says this: the thesis must respond to the prompt with a historically defensible thesis or claim that that establishes a line of reasoning. To earn this point, the thesis must make a claim that responds to the prompt rather than restating or rephrasing the prompt. The thesis must consist of one or more sentences located in one place, either in the introduction or the conclusion. Okay, now I want to point out probably the most important part of this is that it responds to the prompt. If you do not understand what the prompt is asking, it's going to be very difficult for you to write a thesis that actually responds to it. Remember, even if you write something that is historically accurate or even defensible and establishes a line of reasoning as the scoring criteria points out, but it doesn't respond to the prompt, or it responds to something that is not in the prompt, you are not going to get the point. So a great example of that would be if your prompt was asking about imperialism and instead you write a whole thesis about, I don't know, the age of exploration. It's not what the prompt is asking about. It may be sort of related, but you can have a fantastic essay, but it's not going to be built on a thesis that responds to the prompt. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at a prompt and discuss how we would get that thesis point using a couple of clues from the prompt. So now I'm going to share with you the prompt from the 2019 exam, and that prompt is this. It says, evaluate the extent to which Portuguese transformed maritime trade in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century. So remember, it says you can't get the point by simply restating, and restating would simply be saying something like, the Portuguese transformed maritime trade in the Indian Ocean in the 16th century. Of course they did. Of course they did. But the question is asking to what extent or how much did they transform the trade in the Indian Ocean? So it really sets up an evaluative claim by using that word evaluate, doesn't it? And a lot of students, what they end up doing, that these are students that don't get the point, is they simply restate the prompt, or they make a claim that is so broad and general that it doesn't demonstrate that you really understood what the documents were saying. You should be looking at the documents to tell you that the Portuguese made a major impact, a minor impact, a short-term impact, perhaps a long-term impact, negative, positive, all of these types of descriptor words that you should attach to your claim. You don't need to just attach all of them, but these are types of words that you would attach to your claim to make it not only historically defensible, but you'd make it something that is arguable. That's the word we're looking for here. In other words, we're setting up an argument, something that somebody else who read the same documents might see slightly differently. So for example, if I'm looking at this particular prompt, I might see it as, oh, docs 2, 3, and 4 clearly demonstrate that the Portuguese radically transformed the Indian Ocean trade. Somebody else might read that and be like, well, it wasn't that different after the Portuguese, so the impact was less significant. Both of you could discuss that intelligently. You might have a little bit more historical basis on one side versus the other, but you're making it evaluative by attaching that descriptor word. Okay, so when you see that phrase, evaluate the extent, that is the framework for your thesis. So every one of your thesis statements needs to have some sort of descriptor word that evaluates the extent. So how much? is the question that is being asked. How much did things change in this case of the Indian Ocean trade because of the Portuguese? So the doc should demonstrate that. As you read them, you'll see those indicators. Big differences, little differences, long lasting, short term, positive, negative, all those types of things are things you're going to be including as you read the documents. I would not write your thesis before you read the documents, because those documents are going to provide what I would call groupings. So half the documents are kind of in this camp or group, the other half might be in the other. If it doesn't break down completely evenly in terms of the groupings, that's okay. But the groupings are a great way to frame your argument or your thesis. The other piece that the rubric included, if you might have noticed this at the end, is a line of reasoning. The line of reasoning more or less tells the reader, here's where I'm going with the essay. So, for example, you might say something like, the Indian Ocean trade was radically impacted by the Portuguese during the 16th century, as seen in this case, and this case, or because of this, this, and this. In other words, you're saying your general evidence for your claim. Why is it that you are stating or saying this position? Why are you making this claim? That is your line of reasoning. What is the basis for your argument? And in your actual essay, you will give evidence from the documents that back up that claim. Okay, but essentially you're establishing what your argument is going to be in your line of reasoning. So again, those three ingredients: addresses the prompt, makes a historically defensible claim, establishes a line of reasoning. You have to have all three of those components to get that thesis point. Now, I raise the bar pretty high, but if you do it the way I say it, you will most likely get that point. And if you don't get that point, just remember your likelihood of getting the rest of those points on that rubric are very, very low. You need to have everything built on a thesis. That is the whole point of this essay. Do it well. Comment with questions. Let me know how I can help. We'll be making additional videos that go into the other points of the rubric. I hope this has been helpful. I will talk to you later on.